All right, let's find out what happens. We've got the rest of our quarterfinals to send you, so we've got Cedric and Corey in the booth to do just that.
Thank you so much, Maria, Cedric Phillips, Corey Baumeister. We got some quarterfinal matches to cover, my friend.
Absolutely. I am so excited. Nothing better than Sunday Magic.
It's very, very true. And what a great place to start with two players that are very familiar with the Sunday stage. Seth Manfield, Pro Tour Murders at Karlov Manor champion, Pro Tour Ixalan champion. The results continue to grow on one heck of a resume, but on the other side of things, it is no slouch. It is the MTG dad. It is Eli Kassis, who Frank feels is in a good matchup, and Corey, so do I.
Yeah, I would think so, especially since Eli Kassis has not lost with his constructed deck at all this weekend. Really impressive stuff for a deck that he was trying to avoid from the beginning, which, yeah, I wouldn't want to avoid playing this deck, that's for sure.
Well, we are going to get things underway here with an Inquisition of Kozilek from Seth Manfield. Both players keeping 7 cards. Do enjoy what should be a fun one between two of Magic's best. You'll see here with Eli Kassis a Bristly Bill. There's, of course, the Springheart Nantuko and a Chord of Calling alongside just a couple of lands. So no Shuko, no Nadu, at least not yet, Corey.
Yep, absolutely. So probably going to take one of the 2 drops here that he's the most afraid of. There is actually a reason to take Chord as well, since it can produce Nadu. And we'll see if Eli can draw his way out of it.
We're going to head back over to Kassis now, who will play a forest, and it will be Bristly Bill. So that is a card that not everybody is playing in the Nadu deck, but it is working just fine here for Kassis, as we're going to head back Seth's way now. Remember, Necro Dominance is the name of the game. We've watched this mono black deck a little bit here over the course of the weekend, have you and I, and this deck is very different when it has its namesake enchantment on the battlefield.
No kidding. And the last time we watched Seth play this deck, he kind of had that unbelievable draw of Hand Disruption spell on 1, Phyrexian Tower on 2 with the Grief, and then cast Necro Dominance as early as turn 2. Here is the Grief, but the Phyrexian Tower is not in play, so probably not having that absurd draw, but wouldn't be too shocked if we pair this with a way to bring it back right away there, Cedric.
Well, there's a reason I said not yet with regards to Nadu and Shuko, because you do get to draw a card every turn when you play the game of Magic the Gathering, at least most of the times you do. Necro Dominance says that you don't, but that's a different story altogether. Shuko is the card that Eli did draw last turn alongside that Springheart Nantuko and a couple of lands. So Seth has quite the decision to make here. Probably not thrilled with the idea of Eli drawing Shuko last turn, huh?
Yeah, not really pleased with that. Gotta love Seth's laugh, though. Best laugh on the Pro Tour. I'm calling it right now.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
You can hear it around the hall.
Boy, can you.
Oh, okay, so this was not trying to do the Malachar Rebirth type thing, just sacrificing it to be able to pitch to the Flare of Malice.
Yep.
Gotta love all the ways. That finally makes Grief playable.
Yeah, finally. Finally, indeed. Flare of Malice did take care of the Bristly Bill, and then the Inquisition, of course, took care of the Shuko. So what Seth has effectively done here is said, hey, let's trade a bunch of resources, make this game kind of tight, and then if I'm able to draw a copy of Necro Dominance, I can just gas back up. Now, fortunately for Eli, Seth doesn't have it. If you're rooting for Manfield, you're not thrilled. If you're rooting for Kassis, of course, you're pleased, as Kassis is going to sacrifice the Misty Rainforest. We have seen so often over the course of this weekend a hedge maze on the end step, and we're going to see it once again, so Eli can control the draw step a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. You can rip apart this Bant Nadu deck, but you know, when you have 2 fetch lands in your hand, you have 2 surveil lands in your deck, you're able to manipulate the top of your library a little bit and prevent the variance of top decking 3 lands in a row, something like that.
So after a little shuffle and cut there from Seth, Eli's going to take a look. We'll see where this top card will be headed here in just a moment. And Delighted Halfling is something that Kassis is not interested in. So we will head Eli's way for his 4th turn of the game. And there, it's just another land and a passing of the turn. Seth is going to take a good look at that one. We are more than happy to do the same, as it is a bit newer to the Magic game.
Yep, if you do have Delirium, which looks like Eli does have that, you are able to make this land become a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard until the end of the turn. So can, you know, copy Nadu, copy Bristly Bill, any kind of combo piece you really want to get going and have a nice way of just doing the thing, doing the Nadu thing. And Eli's actually picked up some gas there. It looks like Quarter Calling as well as the Nantuko.
And we can't forget about that copy of Otawara as well, which is not a bad card to draw as far as a temporary solution to perhaps a top deck Necro Dominance. Won't solve the problem, of course, but can bounce it before we get to the end step, make it so that Seth doesn't actually have the opportunity to draw cards in that end step, and then make Seth redeploy it the following turn. So a temporary solution, but in a combo on somewhat combo matchup, temporary solution sometimes, Corey, is all that you need.
Is all you need, absolutely. Yeah, a little time walk for a turn is great. And yeah, you were kind of saying this a little bit earlier, Cedric, is when you draw Necro Dominance, your deck just looks unbelievable. But this game, you know, 3 swamps, saying go. This is usually the power level that you kind of see in like Standard or something like that. But in Modern, not really up to snuff here.
Yeah, we are capable of seeing much better than this. That much is for sure. What you saw there might look a little bit strange on Eli's turn. This is actually something that we haven't seen in the future match area, you and I. That was, of course, an activation of a shifting woodland targeting a Springheart Nantuko, and then Eli playing a land for the landfall trigger. So, yeah, that's a way to do it. Get on the battlefield. It's not the best play I've ever seen here over the course of this tournament, but as far as high power is concerned, but it's a thing that happened.
Back in my day, you'd be killing Mutavaults. That's the creature land here. This one looked a little different here.
So yeah, the March of Wretched Sorrow took care of that. Now this is an attempt to bestow onto that token here for Kassis. Springheart Nantuko, breakout card of this tournament to be sure. Combo enabler, but you can do some pretty wild stuff with the bestow aspect of this card, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. So not really trying to do any of the real cool things, maybe the Dryad Arbor copy that we saw yesterday to get Sam Party into the top 8. This is just kind of hiding it and protecting it from a removal spell, so you still get this ability even if one removal spell goes at one of these insects.
Seth will play a Phyrexian Tower, it appears. We'll see if he has a follow-up at all. Part of the reason the attacking here is actually somewhat good for Kassis is because he is playing against a deck that does have Necro Dominance. But that is not the card draw that has been played. This is one that we're much more used to. Here, it's a copy, Corey, of the One Ring.
Yeah, the One Ring is great here. Seth's basically next best thing to playing Necro Dominance, being able to get this going. Well, Eli Kassis is not doing anything too powerful to start. We did see that Court of Calling in hand, plus what looks to be one mystery card. So Eli is just one combo piece away from finding a Shuko, something like that, to really get this game going.
Seth will be adding a burden counter to that One Ring here in just a moment, but Eli will be responding and getting a copy of Dryad Arbor off of the fetch land, which will trigger the Nantuko. Now the Nantuko, there will be no payment, so it'll just be an insect token, and now it's going to be a Court of Calling. So here is Court of Calling. That's going to go get a Haywire Mite. Green mana available. Sacrifice the Haywire Mite with the burden counter activation on the stack. No cards coming here for Seth. And this is a card that Frank mentioned at the news desk, and I think you and I are going to see a lot over the course of these games, no matter how long this match goes. Haywire Mite, awesome in the matchup.
Exactly, and when you have 2 of a card like this, a card that you can tutor for, you know in testing it was just like, God, this card just keeps being incredible. Let's get another one in there.
Absolutely.
And really showing its stuff here in a lot of matchups. Great against Bant Nadu, taking out a Shuko if your opponent's about to combo first, and then of course the One Ring being the most played card, I believe, if not close to be able to deal with the very powerful card from the Lord of the Rings.
Well, say its name and it appears. There is the One Ring. A burden counter is on arguably the most powerful artifact in this tournament. It was certainly one of the most played cards in this tournament was the One Ring, and now it is on the battlefield here for Kassis as opposed to for Seth Manfield. Seth has drawn another 4-mana spell. It is a copy of Sheoldred, which is good against the One Ring.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely good. With Eli having such a high life total here, he's going to really not hesitate in activating this ring here for at least a couple turns. You know, it's not going to be too big of a deal. But I did see the one card that Eli drew last turn was Nadu. So we are one artifact away. And you said the One Ring's the most powerful one. Shuko might also be competing for that one as well in this tournament.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one to argue. Sylvan Safekeeper is a great place to start to maybe provide a little protection around a card like a Soul Spike. Here's a copy of Nadu now.
And just Nadu and Endurance in hand there, so we do not have the combo all wrapped up yet.
Going to sack Otawara, target Dryad Arbor with the Safekeeper, triggering Nadu. This is just going to stay on the stack. So
Eli's going to give Seth the old talking to about what's going on here, and we'll let Eli do the explaining for us.
You want to represent how you're...
For the one.
Yeah.
then I'll target again with it still in the stack.
Quarter Calling is the reveal here for Kassis. Starting to put some of these creatures on the old conveyor belt. Now, it's not Shuko that's doing it. It'll actually be Sylvan Safekeeper that's guiding it along. But there's enough mana here that it might be time, I believe, for the Outriders on core, as Eli is playing that freshly drawn Quarter Calling. And there is the Outriders. And Seth says, you know what? I'm all good.
All good here. I think these players have seen plenty of times throughout this event what happens in this kind of scenario. Going to win the game on the spot, and nice to have the mutual respect from the players here to be like, yeah, Eli, I think you can figure this one out.
On to game 2, folks. Seth Manfield will be on the play here. Eli Kassis on the draw. Seth with 6, Eli with 7. And we'll see if Seth is able to find the namesake card of his deck there, of course, in Necro Dominance. We did see some Grief and other discard in the last game. I imagine that's how Seth will start this one out, as the black deck looks to kind of clear the way for Necro Dominance with those discard spells, Corey.
Yep, absolutely. And that last game was really all about those
already
2
got 6
turns
now.
where Seth just couldn't put Necro Dominance into play. Eli didn't do too much, and you can't really do that against this Bant Nadu deck for too long.
It'll be a Grief to get the party started. You'll see the hand here for Kassis. Court of Calling, Shuko, Springheart, and Nantuko, along with a handful of lands. So one of these spells will be left over here for Eli. Seth is deciding which one. As far as the lands are concerned, that's going to allow Eli to get this game started. A Breeding Pool, a Windswept Heath, a copy of Boseiju, which is, of course, very good against Necro Dominance, and the Selesnya Surveil land there in Lush Portico.
Yep, takes those 2, leaves just the Shuko, has some Surveil lands, and the Boseiju has some pieces of interaction, and is going to have to find some goods here. We'll just see if Seth's follow-up is Necro Dominance here in a couple of turns. Or next turn, if you got the tower.
Yep. Nothing like just Shuko and lands. What's the worst that could happen, Corey?
Yeah, it's
What's
just
the worst that could happen?
a 1-mana artifact.
Yeah, that's right.
+1/+0. I guess I'll take a little extra damage.
That's right. No big deal. Not at all. Well, let's see where Kassis wants to get things started here. A bevy of options as far as the lands are concerned. Be surprised if he played Boseiju on this turn. Everything else is a pretty reasonable option. So it will be the Selesnya Surveil land. That card's going to stay on top there for Kassis. And we're going to head back Manfield's way, who does have a 3/2 Grief on the battlefield, which it is worth noting, Corey, given the changes to the format and how you have to build this Necro Dominance deck, we're very used to seeing Not Dead After All on Grief and kind of a 5-turn clock. 3 damage a turn, surprisingly manageable.
Yeah, not actually that big of a deal here when you're just taking 3. Not really the plan A. You can't think... I bet Seth didn't win a lot of games by just doing Grief. You gotta have follow-ups. Where back in the day, you know, last Modern Pro Tour, you get 4 damage in and you take 2 cards away from your opponent, that can be a serious clock, even backed up with 1 other threat.
Yeah, it's funny. You would think, is it really that big of a difference between 3 damage and 4 damage a turn? It's just one number, right?
Yeah.
But, 3 damage a turn, especially if Eli's not dealing himself any damage, that's going to take 7 attacks to get the game over with, as opposed to the smaller number of attacks that we do see when Grief is a little bit stronger. Now, if we want to juice up the clock a little bit, the old Bogart Trawler's here to help out.
Oh, yeah, I mean, 6 is way larger than 4 here.
You are right about that. You are right about that. As Kassis is going to play that Windswept Heath and pass the turn back over to Manfield. Manfield would love maybe another Disruption spell. Now, do keep in mind that in the meantime, Kassis does have the opportunity to activate that Urza's Saga, and we know that Saga can go off next turn and find a little something, too.
So this is interesting right here. Eli has the ability to make a construct here and block the 3/1. That looks like a really juicy block here, right? But what if Seth follows it up with Necro Dominance? With Eli having that Boseiju in hand, it's a huge, huge mistake if that were to happen. So I wouldn't be too shocked to see Eli take 6, be like, okay, is there Necro Dominance? No. Then make a construct, make another construct the following turn if you want to, and just make sure you're never putting any risk into that enchantment coming on the battlefield, because that is exactly how Eli could lose just on the spot.
Yeah, Seth would love to get a Necro Dominance on the battlefield and start drawing some cards. Eli would love to prevent it as best as possible. And so as Manfield gets that 6 damage across and brings Kassis down to 8, you do have to wonder what's hiding in Seth's hand. We don't have a great look at it, but he's happy to simply pass the turn back. So in the interim, Kassis will sacrifice that Windswept Teeth. Down to 7 he goes. Now the question is he better served to maybe find a Hedge Maze here as opposed to activating the Urza Saga? My question has been answered very quickly, Corey. It's going to be a forest, and it looks maybe a construct is on the way.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you have to at least get one blocker. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see an activation during Eli's draw step before Chapter 3 comes on, just because the second construct doesn't really do much. You know, you can double block Grief, sure, but you're probably just getting this one in front of the Trawler, and then you can leave mana open for Boseiju once again. Wouldn't be too shocked if Seth does have it. He definitely paused there quite a bit on his last turn, but of course, you know, these players are both Hall of Fame level players, and definitely can be doing a little bit of Hollywooding here.
To say the least. So, Chapter 3 has been read on the Urza Saga, and it looks like Kassis is going to activate that Urza Saga. So, second construct token on the battlefield, and now it's time to go a search-in. Shuko among the options here. It looks like Seth may have a response here, though. So, these players with a little bit of communication.
He started to search his library, but I wanted to think in response to this sacrifice. Is that fine or no?
My words were Saga Search. Was it? Yeah, I picked up the deck.
Yeah.
Nothing else happened.
Okay, if nothing else happens, okay, you know.
Okay. Is that fine?
So it looks like Seth wanted to actually potentially respond to the Saga Search, and it looks like it's going to be March of Wretched Sorrow, just hard cast, not going to exile any cards from hand to be able to deal 2 damage to something. Of course, if a Shuko were to hit the battlefield, just as an example, that means that those constructs would be 3/3s, and March dealing 2 would not take care of it.
Yeah, that might have been, obviously depending on Seth's hand here, but if Seth does have Necro Dominance in hand, using that March here on one of the constructs before it becomes a 3/3, I get that for sure, because you don't have to exile a card from your hand to be able to deal with the 3/3 in this scenario. But right now, if Eli goes Green Source, Seth once again cannot play Necro Dominance with the fear of Haywire Might eating it. So we'll see kind of what Seth has for the follow-up. Seth would love to just go land for Shieldred.
Wouldn't be a bad place to be in a
not
spot
bad.
like this. Last game, not close to good enough. This game wouldn't be a bad way to try to stabilize and maybe finish things. In the meantime, coming into the red zone is Manfield. It's not every day that you see Bogart Trawler get blocked in Modern, but we are here on this day, and that construct is going to jump in front of the 3/1 Goblin.
So down to 4, definitely becoming a low life total here for Eli. So one big follow-up from Seth, like a Shieldred here, or of course, Soul Spike here out of nowhere can really finish this off.
Thanks.
Nothing doing, just Seth passing.
That hand is terrible from Eli.
Yeah, Eli does not have much going on here. There's a copy of Shuko. That Haywire Might's going to wear it. You see a Hollowed Fountain and a bevy of other lands there. The Boseiju's still there, of course, to be able to handle something, but Eli just really doesn't have much going on, and can't forget that it hasn't shown up over the course of this game, but Grief does have Menace, of course.
Yep, absolutely. So right now, Eli is just dead on board in 2 turns and has only drawn land so far. Doesn't really have the ability to play a fetch land right now, because he will be going down to 1 almost assuredly here. Now, I guess you can Haywire Might to target your own Shuko here to put Eli up to 6. That's still 2 hits from Grief, and you're still dead.
Yep.
So really looking brutal for Eli outside of a really nice top deck.
Yeah, the equation has not changed here, as Grief is going to bring Kassis down to 1. It's still a 2-turn clock. Soul Spike says, see you later. So, we are all tied up here between Seth Manfield and Eli Kassis. Mono Black Necro Dominance. Bant Nadu getting ready here for game number 3, but more importantly, our first sideboard game here, Corey, where things you have to imagine do change a little bit for both players.
Yep, definitely changed quite a bit there. And we were kind of talking at the beginning of the game there where Grief doesn't really go the distance. Grief took the 2 big cards from Eli's hand, and he just managed to never draw any more gas. So Grief still did some nice work there.
The struggle was real there for Kassis, who was on a 6-card hand this game, starting things off with a Hollowed Fountain and a Shuko. Seth also on 6 cards, so we'll see what the Pro Tour Murders at Karlov Manor champion is able to put together. Going to kick things off with one of those double face cards. It's what huge new addition for this deck is the access to so many of these double face cards. Allows them to kind of, I'll use the term cheat on land, but also makes it better with Necro Dominance.
Yep, absolutely. I love that Eli made some bird sounds as he put Nadu into the graveyard there.
Yes. That bird is gone for now, but it might be coming back to the battlefield a little bit later. Eli has a lot of ways to find Nadu in the deck, of course, with Summoner's Pact, Court of Calling, and Natural Draw Steps. So that's the first bird that's been solved. Seth's going to have to try to win the game before the next one maybe does arrive. So we're going to head back Kassis' way now. Endurance and lands thus far here for Eli. Hedge Maze, not a bad play here with nothing else to do. We'll see where the Surveil goes.
Looks like we did see a Wall of Roots off the top, so did have the option of going Boseiju Wall of Roots, but that's just the value of not only the Surveil lands, but really just not giving away your Boseiju this early, as it could really stop Seth from doing his main thing here. And you can't Thoughtseize Boseijus away, so if Eli always leaves mana open for that, Seth will not be able to Necro Dominance outside of having a second copy.
Another one of these double face cards here for Seth as far as a land is concerned. So it's a little bit of a slow start here for Manfield. It does make you wonder if this is a game where he does have a copy of Necro Dominance. But I tried to warn you. Just because the discarded one doesn't mean it won't find one. And Kassis certainly did here in Nadu. That was the draw step. Shuko, is it time to rock and roll? Well, there's the conveyor belt.
And Seth's version does have a lot of ways to be able to deal with the Nadu coming into play without actually targeting it. Flare of Malice is one of them, as well as, of course, you can just Soul Spike it. They will get Eli would get a trigger off that, but End Force of Despair destroys all creatures that entered the battlefield.
Trigger again.
Well, here's the March. Another trigger here, so that's the first one. Springheart Nantuko added to the grip. That'll die now. Seth will gain 4 life, so these players will resolve the stack accordingly. And now that Shuko trigger, that'll be an Otawara. And so a little bit of value there from Nadu in the land and the Nantuko. But Seth did solve the problem for a second time.
But at what cost, Cedric?
Yes.
That was just think about this as a surface level play. It was a 3-mana card that drew 2 cards for Eli. And Seth cast 3 cards to deal with it.
Yeah, had to use 3 cards there with the March. The Fatal Push and the Break Dice, those are long gone.
Yeah.
And again, the March does solve the problem, but it feels all so temporary as Seth is resolving an Inquisition of Kozilek to take care of that Springheart Nantuko, leaving Kassis with the aforementioned Endurance and Wall of Roots.
Yeah, you a fan of getting 5 for 1?
You know, it's
on
not
a Sunday morning?
It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite.
But if one deck doesn't mind losing a ton of cards, it is definitely going to be this Necro Dominance deck, especially with Boseiju on the battlefield. So if Seth has it in hand, maybe one more land, and we are all good to go. But there is the cost of the Phyrexian Tower if Seth does indeed have it, as that only produces colorless.
It's a Wall of Roots, it's a Dried Arbor, and it's a Shuko onto the Dried Arbor. Eli's last card in hand is that copy of Endurance. Boseiju, of course, among the lands right now. So if Seth does have a Black Source and a Necro Dominance, would be clear for takeoff, but does not appear to be the case. So Manfield will simply pass the turn back over to Kassis, and we will get a Wall of Roots activation alongside those 2 untapped lands to hardcast and Endurance. And Kassis is going to target himself to put those Nadus, plural, back in the deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Get a fetch land and increase your odds of drawing another Nadu there by another 50%. Plus, this is just a nice little clock here. 5 damage at a time. Not only is great at closing the game off if Seth keeps kind of doing nothing here, but shortens the effectiveness of Necro Dominance if we do end up seeing it.
It looks like Endurance will be wearing the Shuko now, and Dried Arbor and Endurance are going to come into the red zone here. It'll be 5 all day, as Seth is going to fall from 21 to 16. Kassis' draw step was a copy of Urza's Saga. Not always in love with drawing lands, but one that does do something is better than nothing. So one counter on the very powerful Saga as we head back Manfield's way. Finally reaching for some mana is Seth. This is another copy of Phyrexian Tower. Remember, those are legendary, and now it'll be
my big play.
a removal spell.
Very glad it was not one.
It is Fell the Profane.
Seth just can't stop 2-for-1ing himself.
No,
Has to
not
get rid of the
really.
land there to do it. And yeah, just really unexciting plays here so far from the Hall of Famer.
Yeah, we are seeing the bottom end of the range of this deck right now, folks. We promise you it's good. We swear Seth's not here on accident. Just having some difficulty finding the namesake card of the deck thus far in the matches. There is a Swamp and simply a passing of the turn. So Kassis is going to make a Construct token. It's a 2-2 right now, as there is a Construct that counts itself and the Shuko. Eli's going to draw a card. Saga will have 2 triggers, one for the 3rd counter, and then, of course, the 2nd one to sacrifice the Saga. So, before the sacrifice does take place, another Construct is on the way, and I think it might be another Shuko on this day. Though, Haywire Might has been really good for Kassis. Has already used one, but also put it back in the deck if memory does serve. So there are some options here, and Eli is weighing them between Shuko and the Haywire Might. And hey,
Ooh,
a little something spicy from the board, perhaps.
little Vexing Bobble here, being able to prevent any free spells from being cast here. That's a nice one against Soul Spike, other Flare of Malice style effects as well. And I got to say, you know, of course, Necro Dominance, when you have that, it looks amazing. When you don't have it, it looks quite bad. So I would say the floor on this mono black deck is really, really low. The floor on the Bant Nadu deck, it's definitely not great when you don't have Nadu, but I mean, look at what Eli's doing. Still playing a good, fair game. Constructs really scale up pretty quickly, and you're still able to do some nice stuff. And we see the hands cross there from Seth. That means we are hellbent. And this game looks pretty rough here outside of top decking Necro Dominance. But even if you do that, the play of just drawing 7 cards and then gaining some life back, not really on the table. I think Seth's biggest draw here would just be Shieldred to negate the attacks and hope Eli just starts drawing some bricks.
Yeah, and that was not a Shieldred, and I got bad news. Eli didn't draw a brick either, so there is a Springheart and a Tuco, and that is going to be bestowed onto a Construct token. Eli does have, I believe, a land here to follow up with. It is a breeding pool indeed. Landfall trigger. It looks like Eli is going to pay the colorless and the green, which will yield another Construct token, which is also important because it's going to grow the other Construct token. See, we call this in the business, Corey, a combo.
A combo. Is this a Splinter Twin situation, would you say?
It might be.
Might be.
It might be.
You know, we saw the corner case scenarios that you have here. Putting the Bestow on Construct is great. Putting the Bestow on Dryad Arbor is excellent. You just have so many ways to have good plan Bs, plan Cs in this deck if you don't have the just absolute combo of winning with Nadu on the spot. And Eli can just draw that at any point, and the game ends. Which it might be over right now anyways, just with an attack.
Yes, indeed. So Kassis will draw a card. It's time to move a Shuko over to a Dryad Arbor. Seth says that resolves. Oh, I like this, yeah. You know, it's free.
Mind games, getting his
That's
head.
right, getting his head indeed. Here come the knuckleheads. Seth is going to swing those 2 cards in his hand back and forth a little bit. But there's not a ton here for the Hall of Famer to do. The constructs, if we count them, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 artifacts on the battlefield. So there's a fatal push on that one. That's going to lessen the 1 construct that's out there. So here's the math. 3, it'll be 4. Looks like it's going to be 5 all day.
Looks like it. So a Shieldred still really won't even do it.
Nope.
Yep. I don't really see an out here for Seth with that Vexing Bobble being some nice piece of technology. Kind of a card when it was spoiled, I was thinking it was going to be just an answer to Solitude, you know, these kind of pitch elementals. But really nice against the Necro Dominance pitch deck when Seth has access to about 8 cards that are supposed to be free.
There's nothing this Bant Nadu deck can't do, getting in the red zone there with a motley crew, to say the least. Eli Kassis is going to win game number 3 here against Seth Manfield. And you guys want more? Well, here comes game number 4. Seth Manfield on the play. 7 cards to Eli's 7 cards.
Okay.
This will be a grief to
But with
get
no land.
things started. Yes, indeed. So, multiple copies of Delighted Halfling, a Veil of Secrecy, a Sylvan Safekeeper, Urza's Saga, Windswept Heath, And a Temple Garden is what Kassis is working with.
Yeah, and normally when you see that on turn 1, you just are like, ugh, one of these games, especially when you're on the draw and you have a Veil. But when Seth doesn't play a land, you got to be feeling a lot better that this isn't the biggest deal here. So probably just this as a play. You might have a follow-up as a 1-mana hand disruption spell, like an Inquisition, something like that.
And the Veil is going to bite the dust. Seth is going to record that information. Oh, here it comes. One of my favorites. One of those double face cards. Corey, I'll give you $1 million if you can tell me the name of that card.
Oh, God. Well, let me just...
No. Put the iPad down.
You know what? You keep your millions, good sir.
That's so kind
I
of
know
you.
it, of course, but, you know, I don't want to take your money, buddy.
Thank you for not asking me, by the way. I really appreciate it. Thank you. It's not Bogart Bog.
I bet it is Fellmeyer.
Oh, you think it's Fellmeyer?
It's Fellmeyer.
You sure it's not Grim Pathway?
Actually, yeah, it looks like Grim Pathway.
This deck has a bunch of goofballs in here that do facilitate things. It could be Malakir Meyer, actually. Twitch chat's having some fun with this. Nobody knows for sure. We just know that it taps for black mana. That's the one thing we can promise you.
Not even Seth down there reading the cards like, it could be any one of them. Oh, we got the card graphic. Maybe it is the flip side of Fell the Profane.
Oh, let's see. Is this going to be a Grief?
Okay. Definitely a good reason to take the Veil the first time. Getting rid of Necro Dominance. That's pretty telling.
Well, to me, that means that there's probably another Necro Dominance in hand.
You know, I think you might be right there, Cedric.
That's just my best guess, is that there's probably another one hiding out in the grip there for Seth.
Yep.
So you do see Kassis' hand once again, another copy of Delighted Halfling, a Sylvan Safekeeper, Urza's Saga, Misty Rainforest, Windswept Heath.
So we might be finally doing the thing here from Seth. Looks like that might only be one card left in hand, though, which would be a big problem, is having to, of course, top deck land 3 to go along with the Necro Dominance. Maybe that was 2, of course.
Nope.
That Necro Dominance should be in the exile.
Which one is exile?
Sorry.
Yep, and then we're going to clean this up, and it is all cleaned up right now. So shout out to our table judge there to make sure this game state is where it should be as we head back over to Kassis, who is without a Veil of Summer and a Sylvan Safekeeper now.
I think it was a land. It looked somewhat eerily close to a Boseiju. Maybe not. That would be a devastating draw, but with not leaving green mana open there, I kind of doubt it.
This is a Phyrexian Tower.
Once again, not able to cast Necro Dominance unless he has another Grief to pitch to it. Man, Seth's lands have not agreed with him. Yesterday when we were watching Seth's Winnanen, this Phyrexian Tower looked amazing as it was paired for a turn 2 Necro Dominance with a Grief, but we're really seeing the variance of this powerful new addition here from MH3.
Windswept Heath is the play for the turn here for Kassis. And now here's an attack with the Delighted Halfling. Manfield going to fall down to 19, and Kassis will simply pass the turn back. Seth is in desperate need here of a black source to presumably play a copy of Necro Dominance.
And it's got to be right here. Because Urza's Saga is coming off Chapter 3 next turn, Haywire Might is going to be able to lock up that play, and it really could be the difference of Seth having a chance to advance the next round. And a Veil to counter that. That just feels so bad.
Yeah, it's nothing's going right here for Manfield. Nothing is going right.
No.
You're going to see Kassis sacrifice a Windswept Heath. Again, a lot of options as far as lands are concerned. It's just going to be a basic forest here, which leads me to believe that we're going to see an Urza Saga activation to yield a construct.
Looks like it. And yeah, Eli's just been 2-for-1ing or more, Seth, all morning here. I think Eli's been 2-for-1ing people since, 1996.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good clean living here for Kassis in his career. Seth, no slouch either, of course. 2-time Pro Tour champion. Won a Pro Tour earlier this year. Top 8's another one in the same season. We'll see what he can accomplish at the World Championships later this year at MagicCon Las Vegas. But this top 8 match has not gone according to plan. We have not seen any Necro Dominance here Corey, this morning.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, these two players are buddies. They used to be teammates here not too long ago. Eli was on Team CFB until very recently made the switch to Team Handshake. A little change of scenery there for now the 3-time PT Top 8 competitor.
A Shuko will be the weapon of choice off the Urza Saga. Misty Rainforest is the follow-up, and now it is that Vexing Bauble for Kassis. Delighted Halfling is going to wear that Shuko, and here comes the Construct alongside the Halfling. Quick count of the artifacts will be 4 all day. Delighted Halfling is 1, Shuko is another. That'll be an attack for 6 as Manfield falls down to 13, and Seth needs one heck of a draw step, folks.
Yeah, Eli has 11 damage on the crackback next turn, and that's basically lethal against this deck. You know, unless there's a Shieldred here to soak up some damage, maybe gain some life back. Okay, we're still playing Magic for sure.
We are still playing Magic. Shieldred is step number 1 here for Manfield. So the big 4/5 has finally arrived, and that does a nice job of blocking as there's the Hedge Maze off of the Misty Rainforest.
Now, there is a lot of ways that Eli just straight wins the game. I mean, there's some sideboard to fairies that would be amazing against Shieldred, but of course, there's the 4 Court of Callings, the 2 Summoners Pack, the 4 Nadus, maybe a couple artifacts to piece something together. There's a lot of things Eli can find to advance to the top 4 here at this Pro Tour.
Right now, Eli is going to find his life total go from 16 to 14. See ya. See ya. Pleasure doing business with ya.
I believe it is time for that conveyor belt you've been talking so much about this weekend.
Oh, I see Seth's going to settle in. Well, you know what, Seth? So will I.
All right, target 1.
That's 1. Let's have some fun. Windswept Heath is the first one. Trigger 2, Breeding Pool. It's going to enter the battlefield tapped over. To the next construct will be a Windswept Heath. Next up on activation number 2 will be a Teferi. That one is pretty scary. Delighted Halfling is enough. Eli Kassis is going to win this game and match here over Seth Manfield. The MTG Dad is moving on to the semifinals 3-1. It was a lot of fun. Not for Seth because we did not get to see his namesake enchantment ever do anything. What are we doing here?
We did see it.
Did we?
He just revealed it at the very end. He's like, look what I finally drew. Way too late. As he couldn't have played it that last turn, he could have drew 1 card to not die on the spot to just the attack, let alone, you know, Nadu, of course, doing what we just saw. As that was pretty nasty.
Yeah, absolutely brutal stuff there. We promise, if you weren't with us on Friday and Saturday, we do promise this Necro Dominance deck is rather good to say the least, and the card is incredibly powerful. There is another copy of that deck in the top 8 in the hands of Manoa that we perhaps will see perform a little bit better. So if you are fans of that mono black strategy with Grief and discard Necro Dominance, it is pretty darn good. 2 copies here in the top 8, but Nadu continues to be the story of the tournament, Corey.
I will say Manoa is the only hope left now for it to be not Bant Nadu all the way down. So yeah, gonna need to see some Necro Dominances from that that gamer for sure.
We can only hope. We'll be bringing you a little bit of that match later on over the course of the quarterfinals, but for now, we got to talk to Eli, who won a very impressive match over Seth.
Eli Kassis has just taken down former world champion Seth Manfield. That's going to feel pretty darn good. Keep it going.
Thank you, it does. Seth's an old teammate of mine for some time now, so it's a little, what do you call it, bitter, but still obviously awesome to be here and super happy to keep running into you in these interviews.
Well, hey, I'll keep interviewing you if you keep showing up here. So,
Deal.
Eli, I know that you're always so cool, calm, and collected throughout these, but now that you wait for your next opponent, what's your ritual going into the next of this day 3 Sunday?
Honestly, I try not to think about it. If you put too much emphasis on it, I think you just overthink it and stress it. So I'm a sort of play from the hip player, and I prefer to just keep doing that.
All right. Awesome, Eli. Best of luck, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Hope so too.
Eli Kassis and Simon Nielsen are through to our semifinals. We got to figure out who the next 2 players are going to be. More from Pro Tour Modern Horizons 3 here in Amsterdam right after this short break.